to ICOMS. My name is Matthew Higgs. It's a great pleasure to be hosting the launch of Mutt Art Review Issue 2. You're not legally allowed to leave the building without buying a copy. We're checking, so we're checking you on the way out. It's $10 and it's available behind the wall. One housekeeping thing, please silence your phones, and appreciate it. And I just wanted to say thanks to the artist whose show is sitting in, Eli Ruhal, who very gracefully allowed us to relocate this piece of his work, which this morning was over here on this wall, and will return tomorrow morning. But, we'd like to welcome you all, and I'm going to now welcome Cara to introduce tonight's proceedings. Thanks very much for being here, really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're celebrating the launch of Mutt Art Review Issue 2. We're really grateful to everyone at White Palms, Matthew, and Aaron, and Violet, and Michael. Thank you very much.
And Anne.
I said Anne.
Oh, you did say that, sorry.
Anne again. Anne, yeah, has been holding it down. This is our first reading that we've organized, and it's an incredible turnout, and also like a dream of a reading with these two readers that are here. Incredible. The reading is going to go for a little bit over 30 minutes, and then you'll have time to mingle and check out the issues and grab a glass of wine. So I'm going to introduce the first speaker, John Yao, and then before Lucy reads, I'll come back and introduce Lucy. We're really honored to have both these amazing and beloved talents with us tonight, so thank you. John Yao's first book of poems, Crossing Canal Street, was published in 1976. He has written and published poems ever since. His books include Corpse and Mirror, selected by John Ashbery for the National Poetry Series in 1983, as well as Edificio Sayonara, Forbidden Entries, Borrowed Love Poems, Further Adventures in Monochrome, and Genghis Chan on drums. We're really thrilled that Omnidon Publishing has recently released a collection of Yao's new and selected poems from 1974 to 2024. It's called A Diary of Small Discontents. I do yourself a favor and go get a copy this weekend and enjoy it over the holidays and get one for a friend as a gift. I consider Yao one of the best art writers working in the U.S. today, and I'm sure he's impacted many people in this room. He's written on hundreds of artists while arts editor at the Brooklyn Rail and most recently at Hyperallergic, among other publications. In this second issue, we feature the surrealist poet and artist Ted Jones, whose recent posthumous solo show was on view at Zurcher Gallery in Soho. I'd like to read a line from Yao's review, as I think it captures some of the spirit of Jones' art, as well as the careful way Yao listens to the deeper resonances of an artist's work. This is Jones at his best: rude, irreverent, vulgar, mysterious, and inventive. Working with inexpensive materials and whatever else was at hand, Jones made art fun. The modesty of his materials is a joyfully raised middle finger to the art world's obsession with entrepreneurial art and studios full of assistants, money used to make money. His studio was wherever he could work in his notebook. We're honored to have John here reading a selection of his poems and one or two by Ted Jones also. Thank you very much.
After we negotiate a geographic position.
Any of you need a seat and there's an empty chair, feel free to take it before John starts.
All right, I'm going to start with two poems by Ted Jones.
All right, can you hear me? Ted was a character. That's all I can say about him. He's actually a wonderful artist. And he did this amazing collaboration. It's I first saw, I think, at the Mutt, with about 300 artists, poets, and it's one of the great works. And I believe someone in New York, a museum in New York, bought it. I mean, that museums in New York are not always completely stupid. The truth. If you should see a man walking down a crowded street talking aloud to himself, don't run in the opposite direction, but run toward him, for he is a poet. You have nothing to fear from the poet but the truth. And second poem, he considered himself a surrealist. So I'm going to read one of his more surreal poems. Jazz Me Surreally Do, to Robert Goffin. The image of an airplane is Count Basie's sparse piano touch. The propeller is oxtail stew for aardvarks. The fuselage of collared blues riffs. The biplane wings of all B flat minor. The cockpit of mulatto Jim's crowing. The parachute of Pangolin scales leaks. The landing gear substitute headgear. The World War I goggles of worn biscuits, the wings painted in gravy of drumsticks, the tailspin Tommy gun of pot liquor, the rudder strut and two-tone fisticuffs, the windshield of saxophone reeds, the dive bomber smothered in chocolates, the gliding in behind okapi clouds, the bailing out C-sharp minor, the three-point airfield of landing solo, the hangar made of sweet potato fried pies, the pilots of women libation swung, the crash pad of jazz wisdom, if Count Basie's sparse touch is airplane. Okay, so I'm going to read from this book, and then I'll end with a poem that's in Mutt. I'm assuming Mutt is named after our Mutt, but I never asked them. So this is the book, just came out, Diary of Small Discontents, being selected poems. 1974 to 2024 means I've been writing for 50 years. I haven't gained any intelligence over this. Still as dumb as ever. So this is I wrote a lot of poems during COVID. When I couldn't leave the house, and I wrote a group of poems called Opinion Sonnets, opinion meaning the romanization of English. And they're based on chat rooms about the Chinese. And this begins with a little epigram. My message is that let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. The trouble with the Chinese is they like their old people. The older, the better. As if each one of those wrinkled excuses was a bottle of fine wine, which they know nada about. The Chinese got it all wrong. Boatloads of their grandparents should be more than happy to die from coronavirus. It's a cost-effective way to save their children from being poor. That's why there's something deeply wrong with China and the Chinese. They believe getting old and not working and sitting around toothless is proof of love, but it is not. Old Chinese are just grinning vampires sucking the marrow from their young and packing them off to factories. Americans know better. That's why they go to the beach and play golf. Americans invented plastic surgery, tight pants, and rock and roll. What have the Chinese done besides give us cookies framed with lies? We really know how to live, while the Chinese don't even know how to die. I promise I'll read you happier poems. This is after I turned 69. I don't imagine that a chariot is hurrying near, but that a sleek car is speeding up. I've started a list of the costumes I want to be buried in, beginning with horny centaur. I try to put aside obituaries, but I'm unable to do so for very long, maybe 10 minutes. I eat the same meal night after night while reading recipes of dishes I've never tasted. I shudder nearly every time I read the phrase lifetime guarantee or your money back. I no longer find it necessary to stop and look at what is going on at a construction site. I decide I won't tell people to stop sending me books, even if I will never read them. I stop and watch ambulances trying to get past cars that don't want to move aside. I begin thinking about different methods I might use to remove myself from the story. I know what my friend meant when he said his dog would take his place on the couch. I think about the cities I'll never return to, including Caracas and Caracas. I wonder when I will no longer begin a poem with the words if and when. I dream that my ashes will be scattered in a remote spot in Ireland that no one visits. I admit that shrinking into myself is not as unpleasant as I once thought. Wait, hold on. What am I doing? Sorry. I get confused. Kind of state. This is after I turned 71. You can see I'm making progress. I did not expect to see myself standing before a mirror. It looked like someone I would never want to meet. I wonder if I made a mistake without knowing it. I'm sure the word disaster does not tell the whole story. I know there's room for improvement, but I decided to skip over that part. I realize this passport is the last one that will be issued to me. I begin to think the joke is not only on me. I can walk in any direction and still end up in the wrong place. I stop trying to make a list of words I will never use again. I decide making sense is no longer an acceptable form of lying. I think it is prudent to let others do the counting. I often tell strangers that I might start vomiting when the seasons begin to change. I agree that reincarnation is a scam perpetuated by life insurance companies. I liked it when the cab driver called me young man and gave him a smaller tip. And then the silent film without music. What if you watched a movie in a language that you don't understand and are asked to communicate the plot to someone who has never grasped what you were saying, said the poet, laughing at a familiar predicament. The faces and feet offer no clues. Suppose talking about the movie reminds you of the first person whose tongue touched yours and said, kissing is like rolling little migraine pillows around on the floor when no one is looking, and that being in love is like trying to understand a silent movie that no one has ever described accurately. All that exists are the pages upon pages of words that have been written about it, bound and embossed in numbered volumes. What has puzzled the scholars who have pored over these poems is that each description denies the existence of all others, so that one has never been able to summarize the plot or lack of one. Fragments of fragments, some of them marked only by the shadows of clouds that were in the sky that day, not so long ago, before memory had become a phantom limb. And then I'll end with the last poem in this book. And then I'll read. You'll see why I have to read one more poem after this poem. So if any of you know the poetry of Robert Lowell, this is my anti-Robert Lowell poem. I grew up on Charles Street and he lived on Beacon Hill on the wealthy side. Memories of Charles Street, Boston, 1. One day I wake up and my hair has turned white and I'm no longer Chinese. I want to ask my mother about this change in my appearance, but she's been dead longer than I've been alive. You have to take the good with the bad, she used to tell me, before trying to drown me in the bathtub. My father sat in the next room in his imported black underwear, smoking a perfumed cigar and jerking off in front of the television that he had dragged in from the street. It never worked. It still doesn't. And the blue stains on the chair are why I never sit there. 2. My mother, if that was what she was, told me drowning was the most efficient way to leave the house. No footprints, hard to trace, never before. My mother told me, I must drown you, my idiot child, my beloved offspring, my grievance. I'm giving you my only chance to breathe water smoothly, to swim away from this couch where death awaits you. 3. You'll grow up, my mother said. You'll be a poet when you grow up, not a beanstalk like the fortune teller told me. A poet who ties words together, one sound adhered to the next. This is the music you will sing to an empty hall or crowded hell, to a room full of eager beavers. You'll grow up and be a poet, singing songs, singing and ringing. No one will ever listen to you, just as you never listened to me, my mother said, to a vacant room, blind at the end of the darkness she had pulled down around her. 4. When I asked my mother why I didn't speak Chinese, she said, when you were a baby, you refused to learn it. What about English? You refused to learn that too. 5. I hear my father smiling on the phone. Just before your mother crashed down the stairs from a stroke you likely caused, she said, the fortune teller had been all wrong. Nothing of what he said about my son had turned out true. 6. My father said the plane flew without fuel like a bird riding waves of sunlight streaming through its windows. 7. My father loved to leave me in a movie theater by myself, beginning when I was 6, seated alone by the aisle. He paid the usher a dime to make sure no one kidnapped or molested me. Michael and Sarah, Jeff Chandler, and Ruth Roman were my cartoon heroes, living and dying in a gray world in a double feature, all glamour gone in their second run. My father hated me and told me so in so many ways I've almost lost count. The last time was when he was at home, dying. The growth had become a ball stuck inside him and swelling. When I brought him medicine to relieve the pain, he said, you're too stupid to give me those. I'll wait for your brother to come home. I'll read the last one. This is in Mutt. I saw a note that Philip Guston wrote on October 9th, 1970, posted on Instagram, and I instantly turned it into a poem. And the form of the poem is a pantun, which simply just means that every line is repeated twice in a specific order. I just did a painting, which I call the tomb, or the artist's tomb. Sometimes I spread out all over the canvas the unstable rectangle of action. There is no such thing as a picture. It's an impossibility and a mirage to believe so. It won't stay still. You can't tame anything with yourself as the master. Sometimes I spread out all over the canvas the unstable rectangle of action, painting, which duplicates and is substitute for your life, is lived from day to day. It won't stay still. You can't tame anything with yourself as the master. Nothing is stable. All is shifting, changing. There is no such thing as a picture. Painting, which duplicates and is substitute for your life, is lived from day to day. So it is truly a bitter comedy that's being played out hour to hour. Nothing is stable. All is shifting, changing. There's no such thing as a picture. I just did a painting which I call the tomb, or the artist's tomb. So it is truly a bitter comedy that's being played out hour to hour. There's no such thing as a picture. It's an impossibility and a mirage to believe so. Thank you. The great Lucy Eyes is going to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. That was cool. I'd like now to introduce Lucy Ives, a deeply intelligent and creative novelist and critic. Okay, sorry. We're very grateful for Lucy's contribution to issue 2 and for traveling all the way from New Hampshire to join us today. Ives' 2024 book of essays, An Image of My Name Enters America, won the 2024 Vermont Book Award in Creative Nonfiction. The Chicago Review of Books writes about that book. Ives borrows from the traditions of auto theory, memoir, cultural commentary, archival research, and even fiction in her prose. Despite the wide scope of these essays, they are of a piece. They are complex, resistant to over-sentimentality or too neat conclusions, and slippery in meaning. Ives is also the author of several novels, including Life is Everywhere, published in 2022, Loudermilk, and Impossible Views of the World. In a bomb interview she gave after the publication of her 2017 debut novel, Ives says, "There is some hope that the historical past, in all its myriad detail and complexity, will provide justice or explain everything. The novel repeatedly offers this up as a possible solution, only to suggest that history is at once insufficient and crucial. You're always left to contend with the present." I think that's a great segue into Lucy's latest essay, The Gates of Sleep, which is featured in issue 2. Also, I want to mention that Ives has a new book coming out called 365 Prompts, Acts, Divinations. It's coming out in December from Grey Wolf Press. So keep on the lookout for that one. I think there will probably be copies at the Press Play Fair in December, maybe?
I need to offer a small correction. It's going to be published by Siglio Press.
Oh, it's Siglio.
In April.
Yeah.
2026. But that's also
Okay.
soon. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
No problem.
My bad.
No big deal.
Well, I'm very excited for that coming out. And drawings are by Nick Mouse.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Okay. So,
That's my dog. Doesn't like applause.
Well, I want to first thank Karen and Patrick for working with me on this essay, which seemed like maybe it was going to tank or fall apart because when you set out to write about the 3 seasons of Twin Peaks, at first it seems like that's a great idea. Anyway, but they were wonderful. Something happened, and I'm really pleased to be here today. This is a great publication. I'm really honored to read with John. Thank you for the kind things that you said, and I love that line about making sense no longer being an acceptable form of lying. So that's a wise one, and has some bearing on what I'm going to read right now. Thank you also to White Columns for hosting us, and I just wanted to say there might be some extraneous images in this presentation, some things that slipped in accidentally, don't make sense here. If that turns out to be the case, please let me know afterwards. If anything seems incorrect, just come up to me, let me know. Love feedback. It would be really, really helpful. So. So this is an essay called The Gates of Sleep. Although it is the most read poem to have survived Augustan Rome, the Aeneid has never been adapted into a film of any note. AP Latinus on YouTube do not count. Never, that is, save for David Lynch's extremely subjective interpretation, Twin Peaks, 1990 to 91 and 2017, which focuses somewhat myopically on Book 6, in which our hero, pious Aeneas, goes to hell. Before you get upset, allow me to explain. I know that neither Lynch nor his collaborator Mark Frost ever claimed to have adapted the poem. This hardly matters. Twin Peaks is such a potent distillation of the state of Western belief, plus its harebrained application to the quandary of collective identity at the turning of the millennium, that it cannot help but be influenced by this perplexing passage in the Aeneid, a passage nobody entirely understands, and which seems to suggest that Rome was founded by someone who gone to hell and not fully come out the other side, save as a false dream, deep fake, or other highly visible yet materially unreal fabrication. Before I get into the weeds around Aeneas's reality status, which, like the reality status of Agent Dale Cooper, I take to be a cautionary tale directed at technocrats of all stripes, I want to go over the broad stakes of Twin Peaks as the series first appeared when I was a child and as they were revised in 2017. The first iteration of Twin Peaks had a relatively clear narrative agenda. Its goal is to answer a question of the kind Lynch had already begun to pose in an earlier film on domestic violence, Blue Velvet, of 1986. The question Twin Peaks' first two seasons formulates is, why would someone repeatedly rape, then murder their own child? And to what extent would a community where such crimes occurred, i.e. many communities in America, given the prevalence of domestic violence, one, have abetted their commission, and two, be able to acknowledge or assimilate what took place? The answers to this winding interrogative are as follows. Spoilers abound. A person would repeatedly rape, then murder their own child because of a childhood meeting, unspecified, with a demon named Bob. This meeting would lead to chronic possession. The community would abet the possessed father's violence due to its casual acceptance of human trafficking and willful ignorance of the spirit world. The community would move on by having weird sex with inappropriate partners, engineering sketchy neoliberal business deals, coming back from the dead, disguising themselves as an Asian man while being a white woman, and so on. In 2017, the Lynchian Frostian question seems to be, how did America get so evil? Here, the answer is less clear, which is to say that it is excessively visible, yet narratively incoherent. To come back to false dream Aeneas, Aeneas is an ambitious Trojan who is without a home after the eponymous war. In his quest to create a rooted culture for himself and his descendants, He travels to Hades to talk to his dad. The way down to hell is not easy. Aeneas is told he must adroitly pluck a magic golden bough that he eventually has to wrench off the tree, not very dignified. He sees some awful things in the poorly illuminated underworld and hears ambiguous prophecies. Subsequently, he and his guide, the Sibyl, exit through the twin gates of sleep, selecting the gate of ivory rather than the gate of horn. As Virgil maintains, the gate of horn is an exit for true spirits, whereas the gate of ivory gives passage to false dreams. We never learn if Aeneas has become a tragic false dream himself, or if he and the Sibyl were compelled to take that exit for practical and or other reasons. The Aeneid provides few clues regarding Aeneas's post-abyss identity. Virgil left the poem unfinished. He died unexpectedly of a fever while traveling and had requested that the manuscript be burned. A directive ignored by Augustus, who published it with haste, forever changing the intertwined futures of Western imperialism and high school Latin curricula. Of course, perhaps the simplest interpretation suffices. Virgil meant that empires are always founded under fantastical pretexts. There is no there, nor, for that matter, there. You go to the plains of the dead to get an empire, and once you pass the bounds of mortality, well, you don't really come back. Infernal information has a price. Or, as the summoning spell goes in Twin Peaks, through the darkness of future past, the magician longs to see. One chance out between two worlds. This is the water, and this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horse is the white of the eyes and dark within. Fire, walk with me. Lynch has always had quite a way with the pathetic, and the entrance to one of the other twin worlds of Twin Peaks, the red waiting room of the Black Lodge, is perhaps his most masterful deployment of this signature meager, attenuated, threadbare aesthetic. An ovular puddle of what appears to be toxic industrial runoff, surrounded by unhappy immature trees, is the way into this zone. Occasionally, a chintzy red curtain of the sort one might see at a small town nightclub appears in the air, evoking liminality and illusion. In the first two seasons, the metaphysical speculation mostly stops here, although there are gestures toward extraterrestrial influence via faux indigenous cave art, ominous owls, and the Major Briggs subplot. It is only in the return that the viewer receives a more expansive theory of the interrelation of this psycho-spiritual bardo and American history writ large. In Got a Light, the 8th episode of The Return, documentary images of a nuclear detonation labeled July 16, 1945, White Sands, New Mexico, are displayed for a duration that challenges streaming series conventions. These images of conflagration rhyme ironically with the refrain, "Got a light," of the woodsman, a serial murdering ghoul whose face is lathered with a dark substance, perhaps due to his past work as a uranium miner, say in a small town in the Pacific Northwest that now contains a very nasty iridescent puddle. If the woodsman's obsession with ignition is to be believed, the bomb is a significant fire somebody, the federal government, walked with. The woodsman goes on a head-crushing rampage circa 1956. After terminating the staff of a local radio station, he broadcasts a fragment of the summoning spell, bringing evil to the masses. A plague animal, neither frog nor insect, crawls into the mouth of a teenager who has been rendered unconscious by the spell. So much for prom night. Yet, we see another more ambiguous and disturbing etiology unfold in this extended exploration of the visual and perhaps even sexual nature of the nuclear cloud. In an eerie hadopelagic zone somewhere below the mushroom, a white female figure vomits forth something like an intestine made of ice. You might equally describe this pale, egg-filled goo as a large nose or dormant man root. It seems designed to give the kind of very bad feeling you get when you see a shipwreck from above while riding in a small boat. Significantly, Bob's grimacing face appears in a black sack attached to the egg slurry. Maybe he is a child of the white figure. We don't know and will never find out. The one thing for sure is the cloud has unleashed this unholy fecundity. If you make bombs that mess with atomic architecture, your nation gets this boggy, faceless mother, or so the images instruct us. And from the fertile, pale slush flow other consequences. This is the water, and this is the well. In the first episode of The Return, Agent Cooper tells the supernatural White Lodge Odeon impresario, the fireman, "I understand." This assertion is not borne out by events, but it is an effective shorthand for what we've known of the pious Cooper from our encounters with him in the 1990s. Cooper craves revelation by means of deduction, and when he can't get it, turns to intuition in order to achieve the same ends. See, for example, his uncomfortable disquisitions on Eastern philosophy. When The Return opens, Cooper has been on Black Lodge deep freeze for 2.5 decades. He wakes into a human reality that appears undergirded by a larger, more diverse, and frankly cosmic version of the two lodges. These lodges are in communication with historical time in two ways. First, through the production of divine moving images. We learned that the fireman extruded the image of Laura Palmer from his head in a beam of golden light and sent it to North America. Second, through the reverberations of human technology. The atomic bomb has catalyzed the worst elements of the Black Lodge. The lodges form a kind of technological unconscious humans travel in and out of. Entities seem to exit historical time to fester or learn in this unconscious, and vice versa. It's not clear which, if either, level exerts ultimate control, although the most grandiose forms of violence find their expression in the so-called real world, rather than in the steam, cinema, and terror-powered heaven-hell of the lodges. These metaphysical considerations suggest that physics has won out in divine affairs as well as secular ones. Climate science, for example, has a negligible role in Lynch's cosmology. If the lodges have grown in size, complexity, and significance, this seems to have to do with the rise of quantum computing, the advent and popularization of the internet, globalization, the financialization of everything, as well as the algorithmic fungibility of images. These technological changes have wrought allegorical effects on the collective dream world. And in this world, image logic is the logic, the one logic. Here, there is no time. There are no true events. There is only space. Lynch's gambit in The Return, if he has one, seems to be to suggest that, like the external memory we have all come to be so dependent on, the human unconscious has itself become objective, technological, and universal. Humans enter it to seek the meaning of the future and the past, but unlike the winsome-coded messages that filtered out of Lodge's past, that gum you like is going to come back in style. What emerges through contact with the updated lodges is greater narrative confusion and temporal displacement. Alas. In the penultimate episode of The Return, Agent Cooper seems to go back in time to prevent Laura Palmer's murder. When her plastic-wrapped body is photoshopped out of the relevant scene from the first season, it looks as if Cooper's efforts have been successful. However, in the closing episode, Cooper again travels through temporal and physical dimensions here with his Sibylline workwife, Diane. Although he loses Diane after a mediocre sexual encounter at a motel, Cooper does manage to locate an adult Laura of a kind. He drives from Texas to Washington with this Laura to restore her to her mother and childhood home. When he and the Laura version arrive in what Cooper takes to be present-day Twin Peaks, they find that Laura's family never lived at her former address. Backing away from the house in dismay, he asks what year it is, and pseudo-Laura opens her mouth to release the same blood-curdling scream that was her specialty in the 1990s. Cooper appears to have become a false dream, haunting a certain realistic, if not real, America, due to a crime that took place in another dimension. Or perhaps this terrifying displacement is due to a real world historical crime that took place in 1945, and for which Laura Palmer's spectacular death was meant, artificially or symbolically at least, to offer certain penance, a penance Cooper has now fumblingly undone. Fair enough. Agent Cooper worshipped revelation, perhaps even visuality himself, too much. He didn't want to solve a murder. He wanted it never to have happened, an impossibility. And as a result, he became what he loved, a gibbering image trapped outside natural time. Something similar could be said of the hero Aeneas, who became a myth of nationhood, also what he loved. The images of Cooper's lostness are among the most beautiful that have ever been committed to whatever medium they may finally inhere in. Yet the nation Lynch and Frost purport to decode, even if only by revealing its total eye-wrenching brutality and temporal and social incoherence, feels muted or censored, as if all that is shown to us is only designed to mislead. The plot of The Return, an epic conspiracy theory in which the most basic rule of the procedural, the boyfriend, husband, dad, guy who knew her well and saw her every day, did it, is rerouted through a Byzantine series of blinds and twists. I'm left wondering if the American dream Frost and Lynch have contrived in this final installment is, at base, the oldest one in the book. The one in which he didn't do it, when we all know he did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you, John. Everybody, I think. Okay. Get drinks. Issues are at this table back here. Thanks again so much to Wade Collins.